And thanks for joining us here on The Pulse, Detroit's only nightly political talk show. It is day one of a new week, and already what seems like a week's worth of headlines has already happened. So let's get right to it. A lot going on. With wars still raging in Gaza and Ukraine, President Trump is now putting two of his counterparts on notice in an effort to stop the violence. During a meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he announced plans to shorten the 50-day timeline for Russia to reach a peace deal in Ukraine or face massive tariffs. He says there's no sense in giving President Vladimir Putin more time because he knows what the end result will end up being.
We have such nice conversations, such respectful and nice conversations, and then people die the following night with a missile going into a town.
The president also addressed the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, saying he disagrees with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that there's no starvation in the Palestinian territory. He said the U.S. and other countries have sent food and money to Gaza, but that Netanyahu has to make sure it gets through. The president also said he's told his Israeli counterpart that Israel may have to change its approach to secure the release of those hostages. Let's talk tariffs now. President Donald Trump saying the U.S. and the European Union have reached a trade deal. It brings an end to months of negotiations with a trading bloc that is the United States' largest source of imports. The deal sets relatively high across the board tariffs for most goods at 15%, but that's a far cry from what could have kicked in without a deal by Friday this week. Under the agreement, the EU will make a big investment in American energy while also buying American military equipment. Last year, the 27 countries that belong to the EU accounted for nearly $610 billion in goods imported by the United States. And fresh off the trade deal with the U.S., the White House is turning its attention to China. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is in Stockholm this week for talks with Beijing. On the table, a potential 90-day extension of current tariff rates, including a 30% tariff on U.S. imports of Chinese goods and a 10% tariff on American goods sent to China. The talks could set the stage for potential face-to-face meeting this fall between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's efforts to defund Planned Parenthood and ordered that it continue to be reimbursed for Medicaid funding. This comes following the president's tax bill that paved the way for the feds to stop Medicaid payments for 1 year to any abortion providers that got more than $800,000 from the program in 2023. That includes places like Planned Parenthood clinics, which also offers a number of medical services on top of abortion care. Now, in her ruling, the judge essentially said patients would likely suffer in places where care isn't available. Lawyers for the administration are expected to appeal that ruling. Staying with legal challenges now, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel joining forces with more than 20 Democratic attorneys general. They're suing the Trump administration over SNAP benefits. If you're not familiar, that stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so many are weary about whether it'll be cut. The AGs say the Trump administration is threatening to withhold SNAP money unless personal information of recipients over the last 5 years is handed over. The administration says it's in an effort to limit fraud and abuse, but those behind the lawsuit say the info would be used for immigration crackdown purposes instead.
There's such a difference between protecting program integrity and violating people's rights. And government at all levels has a responsibility to be good stewards over the private, personal identifying information we request from our residents in order to effectuate these programs. And for SNAP, that information goes way beyond what you file in your tax forms. It includes your housing information, landlord contact information, how much you pay for your utilities, even how much you pay in medical debt.
According to Nessel, SNAP benefits help feed more than 1.4 million people in Michigan every month. The lawsuit comes 2 days ahead of the deadline set by the USDA for SNAP to hand over all that information. Also in political news that hits home here in Michigan, a bill that would restrict cell phone use for all K-12 students in our state has failed in the House, falling short by just 3 votes needed to pass. Under the proposed bill, cell phones would have been banned on school grounds for kids in kindergarten through 5th grade during the entire school day. It would include a ban for 6th to 8th graders during class times and recess. The ban for high schoolers would have only applied during class time itself. The bill would have also given schools freedom to figure out a way for kids to use their phones in emergency situations. According to a recent Pew Research study, 74% of adults would actually support banning middle and high schoolers from using those phones inside the classroom. Well, as conversations about book bans continue across the country, the Michigan Library Association has launched a petition to encourage government officials to protect the freedom to read in libraries across the state. The MLA says it's hoping to give Michigan residents a way to show their support for accessible library collections for all. They plan to deliver the Protect My Right to Read petition to all lawmakers and the governor this October during Michigan Library Appreciation Month. According to the American Library Association, more than 2,400 titles were targeted for censorship in 2024. Well, the governor's race is more than a year away, but the race is already heating up, and the candidates want to talk to you right here from Studio C. We're inviting each and every candidate on this show. Next, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and why she thinks she's the right person for the job. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. It is people, power, and politics. If you're running for office in our state, you want to talk directly to voters. The candidates all making a stop on The Pulse. Every candidate running for governor has appeared on this show. Now it's round 2, and the invite is being sent out to all of them again. Beginning tonight with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, and she's running, as you know, on the Democratic ticket. And Secretary Benson, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on The Pulse today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we only have a few minutes. We're giving equal time to all of our candidates, but I want to begin with just your reflections on this. The Wall Street Journal just did a poll in which they said 63% of everybody polled have an unfavorable impression of the Democratic Party. Only 33% had a favorable view. Running as a Democrat, is that the uphill battle that you face?
I think there are a lot of uphill battles right now, but most importantly, the uphill battle is the pain and suffering a lot of Michiganders are facing, struggling to pay for food. We're seeing a cost of living continue to rise, struggling to buy homes in the communities they want to live in and then be able to afford to heat that home. So the uphill battle I'm running is how we actually take a broken political system that frankly is not delivering oftentimes to actually address the real problems that income inequality creates. And how can we make sure Michigan is affordable for every resident in our state? How can we make sure education is available at a quality level for every person in the state, whether you live in a rural community or an urban community? That's my mission, that's my passion, and that's why I'm running for governor.
One of the big reasons that people say President Donald Trump won the second time around is the same reason Senator Alyssa Slotkin tells The Pulse that the #1 existential threat to America, she believes, is a shrinking middle class.
Yeah.
And if Democrats and Republicans and everybody don't get on board with that, we're not going to get to the root of the issue.
100%.
How much do you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I just finished a tour of Michigan. It was called our Thrive in Michigan tour, where I sat down with voters in Ishpeming and Benton Harbor, in Warren and Muskegon and Traverse City and said, you know, what is on your mind? What's keeping you up at night? Every single one talked about how it's harder and harder to just get by in Michigan. And we want a Michigan where people can thrive, where you can afford to live, to grow, to ensure your family is happy and healthy and safe and nearby, and you don't have to lose sleep over whether you're going to pay the electric bill or your grocery bill that month. So the shrinking middle class means that far too many are being stretched too thin and have to work multiple jobs to just eke by. And I believe that government needs to show up when you need it, save you time, save you money, and make your life easier, address this inequality, and ensure everyone can thrive. That's what I've tried to do as Secretary of State for every community in our state, and that's what I hope to be able to do as governor.
But, you know, those social issues that so many Democrats talk about often, while they may be important, aren't the most important thing that people care about. So you're talking about those issues, the bottom line kitchen table economics that people care about. How do you change people's mind that this is different and this is something that you're looking at perhaps with a different lens?
Well, I think it's got to be about two things. One, the Democratic Party and state government and government more broadly needs to see people's pain and do something about it. And I'm a Democrat because we're the party of the Voting Rights Act, we're the party of the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. We've done that before, addressing historic inequities and making things affordable and accessible to all. We're the party of Medicaid, the party of Medicare, the party of Social Security. So I want to revive that sense of who we are are, that party, that collection of people who believes in these values of lifting everyone up and ensuring everyone can thrive. And governors right now uniquely can do that, especially in contrast to the chaotic economic policies we're seeing at the federal level. We can provide consistency, clarity, and investments in people. And that's what I've done throughout my career, and why, again, running for governor right now is such a crucial thing.
Governor Whitmer went to the White House 3 times in the last 6 months, and she sat down with the president to try to forge a deal, and she was successful in getting Selfridge here. When I asked her about that, she says, look, you know what, I don't agree with everything that President Trump has to do or say, but we have to work together. How important is it for you to work with the Trump administration to get things done for Michigan?
Well, what I've done as Secretary of State is stand up for everyone's rights and freedoms when anyone, no matter how wealthy or powerful, would try to rip away who we are or silence people's voices or take away their rights. But I've also worked across the aisle to ensure we're improving government services, that we're saving people time at the Secretary of State office and modernizing how we do things in government and increasing efficiencies. So I'll always work with anyone to ensure we're investing in the economic prosperity of Michiganders. But I'm also going to, and you need a governor who's willing to stand up to anyone who would threaten the safety and security and well-being of our residents.
Would you go to the White House and sit down with a, let's say, VP or perhaps one day President JD Vance? As a governor, would you sit down with them and would you say, here are the differences I have, here's where we can work together?
Oh, yeah, of course. And then I'm also going to go toe-to-toe if he tries to, again, hurt any residents in our state. Because in my view, the job of the governor is to increase the economic prosperity of all, but also protect the rights, freedoms, and safeties of everyone. And not be afraid to do so, to choose courage at every step of the way, standing up to anyone, even people in your own party, if they are standing in the way of the economic prosperity of our residents. But you always got to try to get things done at the end of the day, because our job is to work for every person in the state, no matter who they vote for, and work with anyone, no matter who and what position they hold, to improve people's lives. Improving
people's lives, something that Democrats say they want to do, Republicans say they want to do, and independents say they want to do. Someone you know very well, Mayor Mike Duggan, running as an independent. And his fundraising dollars are pretty impressive for someone who's an independent. And in many circles, people are saying, as an independent, he's kind of breaking some records and breaking new ground. Yeah. That has to give your campaign a reason to kind of look at that twice.
I'm proud that we actually raised more than the mayor and anyone else running for governor in this moment. We broke historic records in our fundraising numbers, raising $3.5 million in just the course of a few months. And not only that, what I'm really proud of is that money didn't come from corporate CEOs or corporate PACs. It came from people, 27,000 individuals, including people in every one of our 83 counties. Because really, who's investing in your campaign says a lot about who you're going to be listening to when you get into office. And I'm going to be listening to the people of Michigan, just as they've listened to and supported me at this stage in the race in enabling us to raise this historic number of resources and dollars for this campaign.
But Mayor Mike Duggan will go across the state and talk about the success of the city of Detroit that very few people can argue about. What do you defend as you go across the state?
Oh, the success of the Secretary of State office and our, I'm the head of the motor vehicle department in our state, in addition to the head of elections. So typically the head of the DMV is not very popular. But in Michigan, we've been able to eliminate wait times, save people time, save people money, make people's lives easier. Every single one of our 10.5 million residents knows that when they go to my office, the government is going to be there for them and be on their side. And that's something that is very unique in this race. I'm the only statewide candidate running for governor who has served every single resident in this state and worked to improve their lives through managing one of our state's largest agencies in a way that's more efficient and less bureaucratic than ever before.
But what is a blessing can also be a curse, because the very elections, of course, that you helped, as you say, defend and run, there are many who live in this state who doubt the veracity and kind of the system itself, and they're kind of denying that perhaps the elections are done the right way. They believe there's fraud. You say there's not widespread fraud. There may be irregularities. How do you then sit in a town hall in a community like that and convince them that they're wrong and you're right?
Well, I've been sitting in town halls like that all across the state for the last 7 years as Secretary of State. And what I've seen is two things. Every citizen, no matter who they vote for or where they live, want government to be efficient and make their lives easier and save them money and save them time. That's what I've done as Secretary of State across the board. They also want people who are going to lead in a transparent way and be accountable to the voters. That's also what I've done. It's why I've defended democracy so much, because that is our mechanism for holding elected officials accountable. And judging by the fact that we've had back to back to back the highest turnout elections in 2024. More people voted than in 2020. That shows that people do, by and large, believe in the system, believe in our elections, believe in their voice and their vote. And we've only increased the transparency, security, and accessibility of our elections throughout my tenure to reinforce that people can believe in those results.
And you're willing to listen to people who still doubt the veracity or the system itself. You're willing to listen to them and not just call them deniers, right?
Oh, no, I love that because I invite them to work as an election official. The best way, if you have doubts about the system, that you can actually verify those doubts, is to sign up to be an election worker yourself, no matter what community you live in. And we've recruited 25,000 people over the course of several years now to be new election workers, and it's been one of the best ways we can show people exactly how transparent, secure, and accessible and reliable our elections are.
Including many MAGA Republicans who we've interviewed on our air who are actually doing exactly the work that you're talking about as the elections were happening this past time.
And I should say, none of that's unique to Michigan, right? We're also in an era of misinformation and people trying to question results, and a current president who still refuses to admit that he lost the 2020 election. So that is very real, and we have to be truthful, transparent, and accountable on all those fronts. But I'm proud of the work that we've done, and I'm additionally just as proud that we've been able to make efficient one of the largest state agencies in the state.
We're going to give equal time to all of our candidates. So the amount of time we took to speak with you today, we'll do the same with the others. But I want to thank you, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, for joining us here on The Pulse tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Good to be with you. Next, the Trump administration cracking down on immigration goers into, immigration. We're talking about the border. We're going to have more on that coming up next. Stay with us. President Trump's push to crack down on illegal immigration still going strong, with detainments by ICE agents continuing around the U.S. And the first deportation flights taking off from what's known as Alligator Alcatraz in Florida this past Friday. While many are praising the administration's efforts, many others are questioning it, even protesting the methods. Joining us on The Pulse tonight, conservative commentator Aaron Tobin. We also have Waterford School Board trustee John Paul Torres, who worked on the 2002 DREAM Act. His father came here undocumented and ended up giving a lot back to this country. And we thank you both for joining us here on The Pulse tonight.
Thank you.
John Paul, a little bit about your story, because it's interesting. Not only are you a trustee out there in Waterford at the schools, you also have your own story of how that undocumented story can end up.
Yes, my father came here across the border in the 1960s, undocumented, made his way up to Detroit, was a farm worker in California, was inspired by the civil rights movement, learned English, got his citizenship, joined the United States Army. So the beauty of it is the American dream and the American story. Went on to have me and my brothers. My daughter is an attorney. She's worked at the Department of Justice. I'm an elected leader. Both my brothers are college educated. So it's the dream of my father that came forward and has become the reality of America today.
A dream that started in an undocumented fashion. Aaron Tobin, you know that there are so many stories, and John Paul and his family put a face to the other side of the story that we don't hear about often, especially in the national news. Do you think that's a problem, that we only see one image of the undocumented person as someone who's a danger to America, someone who's here to hurt us?
Well, unfortunately, we see it in the news daily that there's undocumented illegal aliens that are here taking advantage of our system and inflicting crime and getting into corruption. His family is the cream of the crop. These are the people that we want, much like my mother, who came to this country as an immigrant fleeing from the Nazis when she was 9 years old. She embraced America, wanted to be American, wanted to be an American success story. These are not what we had flooding over the border under Biden. Tens of millions of people that are undocumented.
Let me ask you this. President Trump himself in recent months came out and said, when it comes to farm workers, people in agriculture and hospitality, we have to take a step back at the way we're looking at these deportations and these arrests. There's something that you're talking about here that I feel smacks true with what the president said, which is not everybody is bad. So many of these people hold up the weight of the world when it comes to our economy. Do you see that as well? These workers, the farmers, the people who work in hospitality?
Yes, but there's legal programs. There's farm workers that are legal programs. When they did the raid a few weeks ago in California for marijuana harvesting, there were child laborers going on there. I think everyone, both sides of the aisle, should be against child laborers. against child sex trafficking, which has been going on over the years. We had over 400,000 children under 5 come across the border under Biden. A lot of them just had a phone number, Sharpie markered on their skin or on their clothing, and that's where they shipped them off to.
And so, John Paul, in June of this past year, there were 6,000 apprehensions in 1 month. And we understand in 2023, according to records from the feds, there were 10,000 on any given day at the highest peak there. Do you think this administration has delivered on its promise to try to siphon that off?
Well, I think Trump's taken advantage of the idea that he's gauging 3,000 immigrants a day that he's going to detain. He's talking about 1 million in a year. And I think what he's doing is he's taking advantage of the situation and making it sound as though that all these immigrants are bad. You know, you mentioned that raid that happened at the marijuana field in California. Another individual was detained in that field. His name was George Redis, a United States Army veteran, American citizen. He was detained for 3 days by ICE. Family didn't know where he was. Those are the kinds of things that are happening in this country. People like myself and my family and people that look like us being targeted, people who speak different languages. And I think when Trump goes in and he detains these individuals at 3,000 a day, and you look at Biden and Obama and what they did, they looked more at actually getting criminal actors. They actually went and did what Trump says he's doing. Trump's just rounding up everybody. All the data shows is that about 1/3 of the individuals that are being detained have no criminal record. The other third, about 2/3 actually, the other 2/3 actually have very low-level crimes, traffic offenses, police contact, loitering for standing at a Home Depot waiting to do construction, and then maybe the few that are the bad actors that should be deported.
So let's talk about President Obama for a moment here. Aaron Tobin, we know that he deported so many more people during his term. But again, what John Paul is saying is that he deported the people who actually were the bad actors. Is there a better approach?
President Obama, you mean the deporter-in-chief? He deported so many people, that was his nickname.
But his point is that in deporting so many people, so many of those people were bad actors,
when the illegal
not just the folks
aliens
working.
are here in the country illegally, they are already breaking our laws. This California marijuana raid where someone was detained, it's because there was illegal people there, there was child trafficking going on there, child labor going on there. Until they straightened out what was going on there, they detained people. There are so many people being detained, and I have a cousin that's in the medical field. He is not a fan of President Trump. But when I mention how President Trump has cracked down and how the fentanyl has stopped coming into this country, I said, isn't that something good that President Trump did? He did. He said, you know what, I'm not a fan of Trump, but that alone, I think I would vote for him again.
John Paul, when you look at the fentanyl and also the bill that was just passed, I think a week and a half ago, that basically made it into a new class, into an old class, so to speak, a Schedule I drug. Is that good news as well?
I think it's great news. You know, I think the fentanyl issue is a problem. So I work in criminal justice. I work on the probation end in the courts. I was a probation officer for many years out in the field, past 10 years or so in more management and administration. I see the fentanyl crisis on a daily basis. I saw the heroin epidemic during the 2010s on a daily basis as a probation officer. And when you look at the fentanyl that's coming into this country, all the data shows that that fentanyl is coming into legal ports of entry, meaning it's being brought in by trucks, by cars, by individuals, in many instances American citizens that are coming across. It's not coming on the backs of the undocumented.
But it is also coming in through the southern border, right? And
it is coming from the southern border. But one of the things that I look at is in 2024, when we had the comprehensive immigration reform that was going to be passed that Trump killed so that he could get reelected, when they brought that forward, in there was monies that would be allocated for cutting-edge fentanyl detection devices at the border. That didn't happen. That didn't happen because Trump killed the bill.
That's a Democratic talking point.
It's not a Democratic talking point.
The Democrats were saying, we can't do anything about the border until we pass this law. All we had to do was change presidents and the border was sealed.
Aaron Tobin, we thank you as usual for your perspective here. John Paul as well. Thank you for your time. We can only start to begin to scratch the surface. We'll talk more, the three of us, sometime soon. Remember, if there's a question or topic you want covered, just email us on thepulse@fox.com. You can also catch more of our interviews right there online. I'm Root Raj. As always, it was great to be with you.